The August 9th Planning Commission meeting to
It's ready yet.
There it goes.
There we go. There you go.
big audition here, sorry.
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry.
We'll call the August 9th Planning Commission meeting to order. Liz, will you do roll call, please?
Commissioner Bassa,
Here.
Grass, Austin,
Here.
Gory,
Here.
Purdy,
Here.
Campbell,
Here.
Kerber,
Here.
Olson,
Here.
and Chairperson Urbanski.
Yep. That moves us to the item number 3, adopting the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda?
Make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Motion made by Carol,
Second.
second by Commissioner Purdy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That moves us to number 4, visitor presentation. Is there anyone in the audience that has something that they would like to bring to our attention that is not on the agenda tonight? Seeing nothing, anything online or on Zoom? No? Okay. I'll move to number 5, approving the previous planning commission meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the July 12th meeting minutes? Would somebody like to make a motion to approve those?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Commissioner Olson first and Commissioner Carroll seconded that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the consent agenda items. I'm assuming everybody reviewed the consent agenda. Are there any questions on that? If not, I'll look for a motion. Commissioner Olson,
Second.
Commissioner Purdy, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That moves us on to tonight's action items. The first item up is 7A, a public hearing to recommend approval of the rezoning and variance request from the wooded steep slope and its setbacks for Linda Carlson's home. Liz, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, members of the Planning Commission. We have a variance and rezoning request this evening for the home for Linda Carlson. This is related to wooded steep slopes and the setbacks that apply to wooded steep slopes being proposed by the property owner, Linda Carlson. So to give you an idea of where the site is located, I've kind of given a colorized diagram here just to show kind of the proximate area and what surrounds kind of the subject site. But the site that's being looked at this evening is 15 acres in size. That's owned by Linda Carlson today, where she would wish to locate her long-term home. The property does abut Schramm House Brewery on the east side, which comes off of Chaska Boulevard. Ensconced Woods is the development that was on the former property of Linda Carlson. At that time, her permanent home was on that site, but with the development of Ensconced Woods, they did tear down that home to make way for the new development. So at that time, there was always anticipation that she would locate her home on the remaining portion of her property. And then just to give another area of reference here, the Rivertown Heights second edition, which was the D.R. Horton development coming off of Founders Ridge, Founders Path, is the development that directly abuts Linda's other 15-acre parcel to the west there. And then on the south side is the property owned by the Lano family, which is also being used as a gravel pit today. So the area in question tonight really kind of centers around this 15-acre parcel and where they're hoping to locate their home, which is kind of in that northeast corner, closest to Schramm House. So in terms of existing conditions of the property, so the site is currently zoned open and it's guided in the comprehensive plan as low density residential. Because it's in an open zoning district, it does require to be rezoned in order to be built on, because the open zoning district is basically a holding zone until the property is built on. The property is also located within the municipal urban service area, or how we like to call it is the MUSA area. So because it's within that municipal urban service area, it does require to hook into city utilities because it's proximate to city extensions. So that is a part of the request this evening, as they do plan to connect to city utilities as a part of the proposal. Again, the property is 15 acres in size. It is a lot of record, so it can be built on. There are wooded steep slopes that exist on the northeast, southeastern, and west sides of the property. There is a high level plateau on the northeast side. So basically the area that they're honing in on in terms of where they're locating the new home is where they want to utilize that flat plateau on the northeast side, which is also a little bit thinner and wooded growth there as well. So it does present itself to be kind of a logical place to place a home. And then lastly, on the east side of the property, there is an excavated area that kind of notches into the site that's owned by Linda Carlson. So this does have a long history of how it's been used. So it was excavated a number of years ago. And then when Linda Carlson owned the property, she was approached by Carver County, as well as the city of Chaska, to utilize that property for a shooting range. So both the Carver County Sheriff's Office and the city of Chaska's police department have both utilized this area as a shooting range. That use did discontinue a number of years ago. It was recently, about a couple of years ago, that remediation efforts did occur in this area to clean up all of the bullet fragments and other debris left over from it being utilized as a shooting range. So a unique portion of the property as it exists today and how it was used. So the request this evening, the property owner, Linda Carlson, wishes to construct a single family home and a driveway on her property. The driveway proposes to encroach into wooded steep slope and the 30-foot no grade, no mow setback. As a part of being able to facilitate this request, it would require a rezoning. So that would include changing it from the open zoning district to planned residential district, specifically PRD 81, which is the same zoning district that was applied in Ensconced Woods, just directly north of the property. And then secondly, a variance request from zoning section 15.28100C, which encompasses the setback from steep slopes. So when we get into the details of that, there's a requirement for wooded land that's 18% in grade or greater requires preservation. And beyond that, there's a 30-foot no grade, no mow buffer setback applied to the edge of that, and then a 50-foot building as well. So they are asking for a variance that would basically encroach into the wooded steep slope, and then the 30-foot no grade, no mow with the driveway that they're proposing. So a couple items of note from the applicant's statement for practical difficulty. So they're proposing to encroach up to 275 feet into the wooded steep slope and setback area. They note that there are certain areas on the property that wooded steep slope exists, as well as the setback areas overlapping in a couple spots, which make it difficult and impossible to access the parcel in terms of where those wooded steep slopes exist. They have chosen the home site on the highest portion of the property, which is more of that flat open area and more of a thin tree cover, which was a logical placement for the home site. The home itself will not encroach into wooded steep slopes or the setbacks that apply to that. The home will actually meet those requirements that the ordinance lays out. It's really the driveway that's the encroachment or a part of the encroachment request. They do note or state that the wooded steep slope on the east side, specifically where that excavation area occurred, is more of a man-made steep slope area and not necessarily a natural created steep slope. So they do have easements that Schramm House is agreeing to in terms of providing access and utilities to extend to the property. So they do have those assurances in place to be able to access the property. And then lastly, the driveway and the house location are in a fairly obscured area. So compared to where other adjacent residents are and other properties, the view of the home would be very obscured from those properties. They did attempt to save the most amount of trees on the site with the location of the home and the driveway. And due to the location of where the home is being placed, it doesn't preclude the property to develop in the future. So just want to give a visual of where those wooded steep slopes exist on the property. So the red delineates the wooded steep slopes that have been delineated as well as assumed on the south side outside of the property lines. So it kind of gives that visual that the property is well encumbered and surrounded by wooded steep slopes as it exists today. There's topographical issues that exist as well, kind of giving reason to the reason why they put it on, or they're selecting the northeast side of the site is the proximity to access as well as utilities. So there are utility extensions that can come from Schramm House's site, as well as an opportunity to access the site. So in terms of what is actually being impacted with this request, the yellow areas indicate the encroachment of the driveway, both in the wooded steep slope area, which is the hatched out area. And then the first line measured off of that is that 30-foot, no grade, no mow. So those areas are the areas that are impacted by the driveway. This is just an aerial overlay of the site if we need to refer back. It's sometimes easier to see kind of the aerial in addition to what's actually proposed. And then with tree preservation and tree impact with what's being proposed, they do plan to impact 11 trees on the site to make way for the driveway. It's almost impossible impossible to avoid all the trees that are on the site, but they did, with the alignment of the driveway, utilize the grades of the site, as well as try to skirt through some of those significant trees out there to have the least amount of impact. The whole reason why these smaller yellow areas of impact with the 30-foot is to save a couple significant trees on the site. So that's why they're showing those little impact areas on the north side. Otherwise, the house in the driveway, again, the whole proposal plans to save as many trees as they can, significant trees, especially throughout the site. There's a 30-inch oak kind of on that higher plateau that they plan to save, as well as another larger oak tree on the south side. And then also wanted to show kind of how this overall house site fits into kind of the long range vision or long-term plan for the site. So again, they're locating the home on the very northeast corner of the property. So it makes way for the other area of the site to not be precluded from developing in the future. So in the event that development does come through, the driveway would be reoriented off the local street system. So this access point into Schramm is a temporary access, and that's the agreement with the Schramm House property owner is when development does occur, this easement and access would go away, and that would come through the long-term development plan when this area develops. And all of this is contingent on the Llano property to the south developing. So that's kind of why there's a wait in all of this, and an undetermined timeline is the Llano property does need to develop in order to provide that local street access to the property. So getting into the variance facts, so it really comes down to proving practical difficulty for the request. So what that is defined as is the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner that is not permitted by the zoning ordinance. The plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner, and the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. Economic considerations alone shall not constitute an undue hardship if reasonable use of the property exists under the terms of the ordinance. These are the list of questions that we use to analyze a variance application, which is more thoroughly laid out in the staff report, but really comes down to the findings that we provided to support a recommendation of approval on the variance request. So the first finding, the property in question cannot be put to a reasonable use under the current regulations, so they wouldn't be able to access their property and thus provide a home site on this property. The plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to their property, not created by the landowner. So the wooded steep slopes that encumber the property are a natural formation and something that is not created by the landowner. Third, staff feels that the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the area. The home and driveway are located in an area that will be fairly obscured from adjacent properties. The home and driveway are located in a logical area that will be able to fit into the long-term plan for the site when it develops in the future. Fourth, there is no reasonable alternative to the variance. The home and driveway are proposed in a location that would be less invasive on significant trees due to its proximity to Schramm House. So if they were to bring the home site or the driveway in westerly anymore, it would obviously have more impact to the trees and the natural area out there today. So we do feel that the location of where they're accessing the home today is in a location that makes sense for where they can access the site and gain utilities today. And lastly, the proposed home and driveway are not greater than necessary to accomplish the landowner's objective. Again, the placement on the northeast side is the closest portion of the property they can get to access and utilities. The home and driveway were also designed to be reasonable and sensitive to the context in which it's locating in. And the home itself is located in an area that will not impact what its driveway is smaller than a typical driveway at 16 feet wide, but will still accomplish the landowner's objective and also meet certain fire standards in terms of access. So with that, we're asking to make two motions this evening. One would be to recommend approval of the major variance request to encroach into wooded steep slope and the 30-foot no grade, no mow setback. So variance from zoning ordinance 15.28.100.c based on the findings that we just listed off, and then the conditions that are listed in the staff report. And then the second motion would be a motion to recommend approval of the rezoning from the open zoning district to PRD 81. And then if this were to move forward this evening, it would go to the city council on August 21st. So not next Monday, but the Monday after that. Happy to answer any questions. We also have the applicant's consultant, and then the property owner is online on Zoom if you have any specific questions for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Any question for Liz?
I just have one. Liz, you mentioned that there was a man-made portion that was a steep slope. Could you illustrate where that is?
Yeah, and it kind of gets to that excavated area here. So as you can see, this was dug out of the hillside and created to help mine sand, but also then be used as a interim shooting range area. So it's more so coming from the applicant side that, you know, you can look at this area as more of a man-made created slope. But when it comes to the city's ordinance, it doesn't decipher between man-made versus natural. So if it's 18%, they're required to meet that.
So the whole area that's the steep slope that we're talking about for the variance is specifically dealing with excavated area that was done.
Correct. But it's also hard to say what it was before that.
Right. Doesn't the homeowner have in talking about the variance side of things, they're not saying that I question, you know, the validity of what they're doing, but when they say they're choosing where to put the house, which makes sense in the long term, but it's because of the development that they want in future years. But we're asking for a variance so that they can put their house there so that they can develop it more later. To me, that's my only hang up. It's like everything else makes sense, but on that one, but they're choosing to put the house there. They have the other 14.5 acres to choose from, but they're putting it there because they wanted to be able to develop it.
I think it's, you know, access to other items too. I mean, in order to gain access to,
It's a closer.
correct, for utilities and things like that too.
Because that's coming from the back of Schramm and
Correct,
the
correct.
property to the east of that as well.
Right.
Like I said, that was the only hiccup that I had. Other than that, everything else looked fine and reasonable.
So I saw that it was going to be a sprinkled facility or projected, but will it be on the city water grid too for fire hydrant access
Yes.
close by
Yes.
within 500 feet, I think. Is what it is.
Yep, their fire suppression would connect into city utilities. Yep.
Yes, but would there be a hydrant too within 500 feet?
Not on this site. Basically, from the fire department standpoint, if the house is sprinkled, then they're okay.
Right.
From
And
there.
that's part of what's driving the requirement for the sprinkling.
Oh, okay. And it's a requirement to be sprinkled,
Yes.
not
Yes, it's
hopefully.
condition. It's
Okay.
one of the conditions.
Otherwise, other things would have to occur on the site in terms of a turnaround and hydrant and stuff like that.
Hard drive.
Been there.
Fire trucks. Yeah.
I've been there before.
Anyone else with questions for Liz? No?
The only opinion I had, it looks like a great use and well thought out.
Would the applicant or the applicant's representative like to come up and speak? Please give your name and address, please.
Sure. Good evening. I'm Dave Nash with Alliant Engineering. I'm representing Linda Carlson and the Carlson family. Linda wanted me to make sure to thank staff to help us get through this process. It's been a long and arduous process, but I think we've got a good plan. Like you said, that works. One thing Liz left out is the driveway location. Not only have we selected to reduce impact to trees, we've gone through several iterations where we staked it and then we walked with city staff, looked at where we had it, agreed we should move it here, move it a couple times. So there's been a lot of work that's gone into this. Your question about wanting to place that house up there, not to impact future development. She wants to place that house up there. That area up there is buildable, developable area, but the only way to access that area is to go through the bluff area. So if without this variance, there'd be a portion of this property that's developable, but we can't get to it. And the other point I want to make is, if you could, Liz, pull up that steep slope diagram. If you look at the red, I agree, we don't know what was originally there. I think it's pretty clear. We think if you take away the ravine that was excavated out, that line was probably a straight line across there. And if that line was a straight cross there, most of this variance wouldn't even be part of our application. That's why we're trying to emphasize, we think it was a man-made created issue that's causing a good part of this variance. So with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions. Again, Linda's online. If there's some question you have specifically for her that I can't answer.
Driveway. So when the rest of the property is developed and we're going to basically reclaim the driveway, what's being used and what would be the process of basically putting it back in its current state minus the trees that have to be removed?
It'd just be removing the gravel, the pavement, and probably be part of the development approval. I assume we would just seed it. I don't think it makes sense to try to plant trees in the middle of a forest, but it would just be remove that and extend her driveway to the proposed cul-de-sac.
Questions? None? Thank you. So this is a public hearing. And so at this time, I will open that up at 7:27 PM and let anyone who is in the audience or on Zoom come up and speak at the podium in regards to this item. Okay. Anybody on Zoom? At this time, I will close the public hearing at 7:28 PM and bring the discussion back to the commission here. Any further questions or concerns on this one?
My only one would be if we could add another condition to be able to, when they basically remove the driveway, put it back to its natural state, that they replace the trees that they had to take out to put the driveway in. So from that perspective, they're taking out trees. Some of the driveway that they're proposing right now will stay in, right? And so how many trees would be taken out of just the portion of the driveway that would be at some time?
Would probably be 2 trees.
Just a couple there. So it's pretty minimal. Okay. Good.
But I think that's the part where it's like, because it's a temporary driveway, to be able to access it.
Yeah. It'd be nice to have a couple pines or something planted at the end of that driveway when you go to reclaim it, just so it kind of blends into the rest of the woods there type thing.
I'm sure they'll do some landscaping, but we won't have that until that development comes into play.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? Hearing none, does anybody want to make a motion?
Make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the major variance request to encroach into wooded steep slope and the 30-foot no grade, no move setback zoning ordinance 15.28.100.c in the areas depicted on the site dated July 26, 2022 to the city council based on the following findings and conditions of the approval following 6 conditions.
Motion made by,
Just one point of clarification with that motion. It'd be helpful to just clearly state the condition that's being added. And that helps staff make sure that we're accurately reflecting the request.
if you would.
Yeah,
It's up to you.
yeah. Sure. So you want me to start over?
You don't need to start over. I think what you said was good, but then just to add the condition that,
Condition to,
yeah, that Commissioner Olson is suggesting.
to, along with the 6th condition, we need to add the additional condition suggested by Commissioner Olson to preserve, to take, add some trees or something to, once to replace the actual nature of the existing driveway once they shift the driveway. Is that right?
So motion made by Commissioner Boswell. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Kerber. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All ayes, motion carries. We'll need a second motion for the second part of this.
I'll make the motion to recommend approval of the rezoning from open to planned residential district.
Motion made by Commissioner Gar. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Purdy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That moves us on to item 7B. The second item up is to recommend approval of the concept plan for 3740 Chestnut Street and PID 303 3020 3455 Lyman Boulevard. Liz, the floor is yours.
Plan for 37 Chestnut Street, and then the southeast portion of 3455 Lyman Boulevard, also known as PID 303-300-020. And this is being proposed by Audrius Asakenas. So the project area, or the area that we're looking at this evening, is located on the north side of the city of Chaska, off of Highway 41, also known as Chestnut Street. The property encompasses the former treehouse site, which was contained within 3740 Chestnut Street, and then a almost 3.5 acre portion of the Tell manufacturing site on the south portion of their site. So for a total of 5.5 acres. So just a bit of a background, and this is kind of a refresher of what we've seen before, but the property at 3740 was formerly used by the Treehouse organization, which dates back to the early 90s. They have since vacated the site, and it was recently purchased by Audrius. In April of 2023 is when we saw the first concept plan come through for 3740 Chestnut Street. And we did, you guys made a recommendation of approval, and it was approved by City Council at that time. Following that meeting and approval, the property owner did make contact with the representatives at Tell. And a part of that conversation came to be that they were interested in selling the southeast portion of their site, which again, it's a little under 3.5 acres in size, and selling that to Audrius to combine into their overall development plan. So because of that, that's why they're coming back with an updated concept plan and showing that added area to the overall site. And just a little bit of background on Tell. So they own the property at 3455 Lyman Boulevard, which is immediately north of 3740 Chestnut Street. So they got their approvals back in 1994 for their site and building plan, which showed a total of 195,000 square feet of building, plus a potential area for future building expansion on the north side. So that expansion area. With that being done, the southeast corner of the site was planned for future parking to accommodate any building addition to the property. However, we have analyzed the site. The site still has ability to add more surface parking, as well as look at other parking options on the north side of their site. So releasing the southeast area doesn't preclude TEL from being able to expand on their property. So them selling it off to Audrius and the development plan doesn't put them in a precarious situation at all. So we just want to make that clear in the beginning here. And here's just a colorized layout of the TEL property and the southeast portion that was planned for that future parking area. So a majority of what was shown on the site plan has been constructed today. They still have ability to build on the north side and ability to add additional surface parking if they needed. So again, the 3.5 acres or 3.37 acres, they're looking at selling to Audrius to combine into his 3740 Chestnut Street location. So the property owner did conduct a neighborhood meeting in February of this year. And at that time, no one showed up to the meeting, but they did still do their due diligence and reached out to the adjoining tenants of Pondview, which is the business directly south of this property. They did hear a couple of responses back from River Valley Dance and Edward Sales. They were generally supportive of the project and will continue to coordinate on items such as access, utilities, snow removal, and the like. The property owner and applicant, Audrius, also followed up with the Pondview tenants in July of this year to inform them of their updated concept plan, but have not received any feedback from the tenants as of yet. So the existing conditions of the property. So the property that's in question is highlighted in yellow on this exhibit. It totals approximately 5.5 acres in size. It's currently zoned open on the south half and PID 4 on the north half. On the south half is where that existing single family home and detached garage currently are located. So those would be demolished as a part of this plan. There are a few scattering of trees through the site, but for the most part, fairly open in terms of development. Wooded steep slope areas define the property on the west side and more than likely will be on some of the north side, but may not impact the north side developability. But all of that would have to be further defined as they continue down the process. And then lastly, there is a shared access that accesses both 3740 as well as the Pondview users to the south here. Before it used to operate as a full access, but now it has been converted to a right in, right out, which has been basically looked at with MnDOT, with the Pondview users, as well as the current property owners in terms of a safer access point here. So it has since converted to that right in, right out onto Highway 41. Just a couple views into and out of the site from both the highway on the bottom here, and then more internally in the site from the home and looking towards the lake area. So what they're asking for is a concept plan approval for the construction of an office industrial building totaling 37,250 square feet with a total of 18 tenant spaces. That will be approximately 2,000 square feet per tenant. So the tenants that they're hoping to locate in this new facility would be small emerging businesses that are transitioning from out of their homes or even smaller workspaces to have a little bit more of a medium scale type space. So they'll mainly specialize in small production operations, manufacturing, product distribution, professional services. And then businesses that need any type of outdoor storage or auto repair would not be the type of users that would locate here. This is the updated concept plan. If you remember before, basically the south half of this building is what was proposed before. So with the added Tell property, they're looking at basically doubling the size of the building and having it be more of a C-shaped building. So access into the site would come from that shared access off of Highway 41. The C-shaped building would kind of orient more towards the east as users are entering the space. So the storefronts and pedestrian access and overhead doors would all kind of face those main facades, both on the north, south, and the internal elevations here. There will be two other units on the west side that would come off of that facade, but the majority would be on the north, south, and internal spaces here. This will also be a one-story building and then be a little bit under 38,000 square feet. The parking and circulation would fully encompass the building here. So there'd be full circulation around the site, which is actually an improvement compared to last concept plan where they were pretty bound within their property lines to make full movement around the building. So adding the additional Tell property puts them in a much better situation from a parking and circulation standpoint. So they are providing the amount of stalls that are required for this size of facility. And then just a couple section cuts just to give kind of that understanding of topography and what you're seeing from Highway 41. So for the most part, there's a pretty significant berm that exists today on the east side of the site abutting Highway 41. So they do plan to maintain that berm that exists along that edge. So the building and the site would kind of lay a little bit more depressed into the site, and that berm and trees and landscaping that they plan to do will be that primary edge on the east side. They also took the liberty to do a fire truck turning analysis on the front end here just to show that this site works from a circulation standpoint. So there hasn't been any noted issues from that. And again, an added improvement compared to last time. In terms of the building design hasn't really changed from concept plan, but again, as we work into preliminary, we'll want to see a little bit more analysis done on the building materials applications to the building and the type of materials that they're proposing. Again, we don't have that detailed information at concept, but we'll get that as we move into preliminary. But a couple things to work on is just how they're organizing the materials on the building so that they're done in a conscious fashion, as well as providing materials that will meet industrial standards for building design and materials. So just a couple things to work on for preliminary. So they will need to get the wooded steep slope delineated on the Tell site. It has been delineated on the former treehouse site. So making sure that all flows together. And then again, as I noted before, working on the building design and materials and how the materials harmoniously play together on the building. And then also opportunity to provide tie-ins with Chaska in general. So with that, we're asking you to make a motion to recommend approval of the concept plan for 3740 Chestnut Street and the southeast corner of 3455 Lyman Boulevard based on the conditions that are listed in the staff report. And then if this proposal moves on this evening, it would go to City Council on August 21st as well. Happy to answer any questions. We do have the property owner and applicant here in the audience as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Liz? Applicant property owner, would you like to come up and address this at all? Please state your name and address also.
Tom Goodrum with Moore Engineering, Plymouth, Minnesota. And we are pleased to be before you again tonight regarding this project. We're excited about it as we move forward. We're still receiving a lot of interest in the project. Just to give you a little history of how we got to this point, after we met with you, met with the city council, we did reach out to TEL. What we wanted to do is ask them just for a grading easement so we don't have to build a retaining wall between our two properties. Keep it as natural as possible. The two sites look natural next to each other without having this wall separating us. In conversation with them, they got excited about our project as well and started talking about, well, how else can we improve the site? So we looked at, well, how about subdividing a little piece of it so we could get that full circulation, and conversations continued until we start looking at the entire 3 acres of their southern part, their southern property. I got to tell you right now, we do not have an agreement with them at this time. We're still negotiating. What we're showing tonight is the maximum build out that we could if we bought property from TEL. When we come back, we could come back with something a little bit smaller, but this is the maximum size. And that's why we want to come back for a concept plan, just showing we're working in good faith with TEL, we're working in good faith with the other neighbors to the south. And we're looking forward to do something just as we were a couple months ago, we are tonight. So I'll take any questions or comments you may have. Happy to answer them.
Tom, any questions for Tom?
So we're just looking at that same design we were last time, but just essentially doubling it, right? I mean, everything's, and then just connecting it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Could you explain the logic of having the sea facing, right? Basically the design you have versus having it flipped the other way? So that the U is actually facing.
Natural side of the lake instead of having all that traffic wrapping around the building to get to the back side of that sea, to get the trucks in and out as quick as possible, instead of having them wrapping around the building, especially when you have parking there, you have client parking, employee parking. With that berm along 41, we feel confident that we could screen it. So it was more of a safety reason, as long as an aesthetic reason, to keep the harmony as natural as possible along the lakeside of the property.
So then there's only the 2 units that actually have I'll say a storefront that's facing.
That's correct.
Oh,
Well, because
Like
these guys
these guys.
are facing inside. So that's the part where it's like just these 2 units are the ones that are facing the lake. And I think that's the part
are the
where
doors here, though? These garage doors are there.
are the inside.
And
So
the
that's
inside,
what,
right?
yeah. So it's just, I would have thought that you would want as much facing the lake as possible. So that was the part where it's like, just kind of looking at the design, I'm like, yep, the berm, I agree. The berm is going to cover up anything on that side, but then it's you have now this sight line for, the lake and area, and you only have 2 units that actually look at it.
And again, aesthetic purposes, keeping the natural feel for the site, the safety with the trucks going or looping around the property. We're seeing this as those 2 offices that face the lake. We're expecting some office users on this property too. Bring them to the back of that property. They may have a little more employees. They don't have the truck traffic. Take advantage of the views as an office operating type business, and then saving the truck traffic to the front side of the property and limiting as much movement as possible.
I think it looks, I was happy to see this come back through the way it is, because obviously trying to cram in the first one, it was trying to put as much in, and you were having difficulties of being able to get everything you wanted in the space that you had. So, by having that TEL space potential, definitely does allow for more to be done. So, and obviously it's concept, so it's good. Probably more of a question to staff, but also, with you, it's more of the, obviously with the construction on 41 and the right in, right out, understanding what and who is responsible for understanding the added, the now at 16 units plus what was already currently there. This is new, so we've changed a lot of things. We don't know what that's going to look like once 41 does open up. How is the city going to commit to monitoring that access once everything gets back to a normal state, if this proceeds forward?
I think one of the things that we'll have to look at when we get into the preliminary stuff is understanding the type of traffic generation that they're looking at for the site. Long-term, it is a highway access. So the state would have kind of that jurisdiction over the access point there. I don't know if you have much more to add on that, Nate, in terms of.
He was stringent on those also, David.
Right, and we know that it wasn't addressed when Costco went in, so it was a lot after the fact conversation. So this is the part where obviously this proposal, even the development of this size wasn't even around because it was treehouse still, so it was open. It was just a matter of now we're adding this number of tenants, and it's just a matter of we've changed a lot of variables. It's just like, how is it going to be handled, as we get closer, because we don't know now. I mean,
Commissioner Olson, Chair Bensky, there is a shared access easement for that with Pondview. And so as we move forward, we'll have to change that agreement just to talk about the addition of the property. There may have to be an expansion of that easement. It's a pretty limited access easement. So we're in constant conversation with the property owners of Pondview, or sharing with them our thoughts on the access, the number of trucks. We're talking to them about connecting our sewer to their private line as well. So we're keeping these discussions open. They're well aware. They don't want to see traffic interrupting their businesses. So we have ongoing conversations with them. I will say right now, we haven't designed the site yet, but I would expect that we'll be looking at maybe creating better visibility at that access point as more trucks coming in. There's already an issue out there with the property owners. If there's a chance here, just on the very southern end of the berm at that access point, adjust that berm a little bit so we just have greater views from that point.
Any questions? Concerns?
I think it looks like a great use for the site, especially expanding with the Dell property.
You can't find a lot of this where you have like smaller units instead of
Incubator
giant,
type.
right?
I like it. Just curious, what is your kind of idea for your interior work height and their ceiling height? Is that like a 12-foot, 14, 20-foot? Okay, all right, just curious.
Maybe a pitch truck too, so the nice natural look to it.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone like to make a motion on this concept plan?
Make a motion to approve to the city council, the concept plan for 3740 Chestnut and the 3.37 acres in the southeast of Tell's property at 3455 Lyman, subject to the following 30 conditions.
Motion made by Commissioner Carroll. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second made by Commissioner Boswa. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, moves us on to number 8 on the agenda here. Does anyone have any other business they would like to discuss? And we'll start down Mr. Olson, work our way around. Nothing? No? Nothing? Quickly, Chaska Community Center has their open house today. They had a session this morning, one this evening. I know this morning session had 30 or 40 people there. I was at the afternoon session. There was probably 40 to 50 people there. We've been working on that project now as a task force for about 18 months. And there's not much square footage in that building that's not going to get touched with the, what I would call, we're past concept and in preliminary plans right now. And kind of laying it out for the public to kind of get final thoughts on and feedback. So if you get a chance, it'll be up on the website, on the city's website, probably within the next 4 to 5 days. And there's information down at the community center. But we'd love to hear everybody's feedback on that, especially the task force, and hopefully we can move that project along and see our community center through for the next 30 to 40 years then.
What do you think of the timeline or process for that? I mean, obviously.
It's a great question. If talking about that today, if everything went perfectly, it'd probably be 2027 before they would start construction on it. Maybe 2026. There's, if it was ready to be signed on the dotted line tonight, to try and get contractors and plans done, it would take probably at least 2 years to get that, just that portion done. Yeah. That's all I have.
Nothing. I've seen a lot of the development contractors are going to town on everything.
Yeah.
I've seen. Nothing.
All right, we will receive in all other meeting minutes. Received. And with that, I would.
Motion.
Motion made by Commissioner Gerber, seconded by Commissioner Carroll. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.